When the slow season hits, what's a good way to keep cash coming in, your employees paid, and keep those lights on? All right, welcome to the Field Famous podcast, a show that shines a light on the field service industry and the dedicated professionals that grind every day on their journey to success. I am your host, Dr. Christopher Fasano. Before we begin, I just want to remind you that the best place to get this podcast and to receive new episodes is on your favorite pod player, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find the Field Famous podcast. If you prefer to watch in a video format, you can do so at YouTube. You can find all those links at BeFieldFamous.com. Our guest for today's show is Scott Young, president of Certified Lights. Scott, are you ready to be field famous?
I am ready to be field famous.
You are ready to be field. I always tell people it doesn't matter if people say they're not because they're going to be field famous anyway. But I appreciate the answer in the affirmative. All right, so Scott, we always like to first introduce obviously who you are, what you do now. But then I want to sort of go into that question that I'm sure you get is how did you get here in your career, right? Like where did it start and where did it go? So first, why don't you just introduce yourself to the audience?
Scott Young, currently have a company called Certified Lights, and we have a sister company, Certified Lighting Pros. So our Certified Lights is a training and distribution company for lights, specifically Christmas lights is our big part of that. And then we have Certified Lighting Pros where we do Christmas light installation, landscape lighting installation, event lighting, wedding lighting, basically any kind of event you're going to have with lighting. We do that on our installation side. So
I've been seeing this business now. Obviously now I remember hearing about it more recently. I'm seeing it, I'm actually seeing it in ads. I'm seeing it show up on the search engines and stuff. So it's a thing. And maybe it always was. I just didn't have visibility. But being in this industry now, I see a lot of these pest control shops are doing that, and these other home service, they're using that also as a way to supplement income and revenue in times where it might slow. I want to talk to you about all of that, but I want to know the journey to how you got to Certified Lights. That wasn't where you started, I am assuming. So take us back and let us know a little bit about that journey.
I'll take you way back
Let's
if you're
go.
opening up the door.
Let's open the doors. Let's go open the doors.
We'll have a little therapy session here.
I'm going to sit back. There we go.
So I'll go all the way back to high school where my dad owned a pest control company.
Okay.
And, small shop, just making payroll, that stuff. So in the summers in high school and in college, I remember working for him in Houston, Texas. And he had a lot of apartment property. So I would be going up and down the stairs in summer Houston in 90-degree heat, 95% humidity. And, life teaches you lessons. And my lesson from that was I'm never going to be in pest control. I went on and got my finance degree, got an MBA, and worked for an oil company for 10 years.
Very different route.
It's completely different route. Wanted to be as far away as I could from it.
How long did he have the biz, by the way? Was it always his business or no?
It started he worked, you can go further back. He went to college, the University of Houston, the same place I went.
Okay.
And his best friend and fraternity and all that was the owner, the Terminex franchise owner in Houston, that had all of Houston, his son. And so that's how my family originally got in pest control. Was he graduated, his best friend said, why don't you come work for our company?
All right.
Randomly like that.
Okay.
So he was always in sales and eventually later in life started his own company. It's always difficult to start your company, but it's never too late. He started it. And my perspective is I don't want to be in that business. So being from Houston, of course, I hired on with the oil company.
Yep.
Naturally.
Yep.
And moved all around the country, including Wilmington, Delaware. I think you said you're from Jersey,
Yep.
so I actually lived in that area for a while. And then my dad got sick with cancer. So 10 years into my career with my oil company, which I was super happy with, traveling around the country, moving around, I got kind of forced to go back into the business. I took a leave of absence for a year. My dad battled for 5 years. Part of that was while I was still working, it got to the point that he needed full-time care. So my brother and I basically took care of him for a year or two. And I went back into the business to help my brother, who has always been on the operations side, working with my dad. And my dad did all the books and finance and marketing and that stuff. So went back and helped him, took a leave of absence for a year. my dad ended up passing away, and I found that I actually liked the entrepreneur spirit. So instead of going back, well, I actually did go back for 3 months and then told my boss, look, I'm sorry, but I really enjoyed being able to make my own decisions and, that entrepreneurial part of it. So,
by the way, I'm sorry to hear about your dad passing, but like, this is a different, what you saw as a kid going up the steps in the hot Houston place was a different side of the business than what you may have saw as you got older, right? And like, and
Absolutely.
With someone coming out of a business world, when you're a kid, you don't see the business side. You don't see the business side of anything. You see like, this sucks. I'm out here in this hot, but you don't see the business side, right? So now you're seeing it from a different angle. So I imagine it might have like opened it up a little bit and you saw something a little different.
It really did. Maturity does that to you. As you get older, you realize things are not always what you originally thought they were. And so, that was my very narrow perspective is I didn't really want to be in the service business. I didn't want to be in the pest control business. I saw my dad struggle. And it turns out it was more just he was a better salesman than he was a business owner. He was an awesome salesman, national of the year for Terminix, that kind of stuff. But oftentimes those sales guys aren't business people. So I realized that, it could be a really good business and you could grow it and you could make a lot of money with it. So from there, my brother and I opened up, we had a branch in Houston. We opened Corpus Christi and then we opened Dallas and we were growing the business.
So when you got it, let me ask you this. When you came in there, how big was the business roughly?
About $400,000.
Okay. And was that in that one location you were serving, the one area?
One location.
Okay. So then you said you added 2 more. Is that what you said?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
We were actually, for a lot of the audience out here will probably know or have heard about this if they haven't even actually used them, but we did the door-to-door salesman, basically Mormons. I don't know if you've heard of that. If you've been around the industry, you know about that. So we were early days, 1999, and we opened our branches just utilizing them, and it was a great return on your investment back then. I don't know now. It got to
you
the
got
point,
a quick base of customers in, right? You bank.
Quick base of customers at a reasonable customer acquisition cost, and not very many cancellations, which changed over time with that model. But it was a great way to get into a market. So we grew those. We went from $400,000 to about $2 million in about 5 years, and the old hard to work with family and friends started becoming true. My brother and I were having kind of issues with each other. Had different ways of going about stuff. So to save our relationship, we decided to. I was actually in a conference in Florida and talked to the president of Terminix at the time, and long story long is they gave us an offer and we ended up accepting it. We sold our Houston branch, and then I took Dallas and he took Corpus. Okay. Formed 2 different companies and grew those from there. I even have old Certified Cups, which is our old logo and has all of our branches on there. So we kept the same branding, so we were able to co-brand stuff, but we formed 2 different companies, buy chemicals.
So you can make your decisions without having to go and get in the conversation, which is where, that makes
really improved our relationship.
I'm sure it did. It's hard. I mean, this is a business where there's a lot of family and familial situations, pest control or a lot of these home service, right? And undoubtedly, those family conversations are hard enough when it's just about family. When money gets involved with it and livelihoods become it's inevitable that there's going to be some there. I mean, it's not easy. I have never been in it, but I can imagine it's not easy.
Well, I think that's why it's hard to get to that 3rd generation. It just, it's difficult. It's difficult. Business is difficult, period. People think, oh man, you're a business owner, you got it made. It's the hardest job you'll ever have. And it's one of the most rewarding, and that's why people do it. There's a lot of people who could make more money just being an employee and not work the hours. So there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that go into owning and growing a business. But for us, it was more of a matter of personality and strategy. I'm 80-20. Like if I get a certain amount of information, I'm ready to move forward, give it a try. If it doesn't work, pivot. And he's think about it, then think about it some more. So, drove me crazy. So it was more of a strategy business kind of difference that we had.
Let me ask you this question. This is just thinking about this from like an operational perspective. So you have one entity with 3 locations. You sell a location. You keep two, and they're two separate companies, however they may be branded, but they're two separate companies. Now, the employees who made up that company when it was 1 and 3, now how do you divide up? How does that work? So, do you know what I mean? But are you hiring all new? Is it who gets to say, I'm going to take Chris? Chris is going to be my service manager, and you'll take, Susie. How is it all just conversation? As things naturally unfold? Is that challenging? I've never really thought about something like that before.
Yeah, and now that you mentioned that, I hadn't really thought through that either, ironically and kind of strangely. But one reason we didn't need to too much is 90%, 80% of our revenue, it was all run out of Houston.
I see.
We were doing about $400,000 in Dallas, and I think $150,000 in Corpus. So they were very small branches. We had just kind of opened them up in the last few years. So there wasn't a big issue there. We kept basically the people in those branches
Got it.
And they just continued with us.
So then you took that, and that was the one. Then you started to grow that. Is that right? That was the next phase? Okay.
So the next phase was I had Dallas, grew that, and then opened up San Antonio and Austin. Again, not huge branches, but I think before I sold again, they were doing 600,000.
Right.
Something like that.
All right. And were you knocking doors then too, or no? It was different. Mm-hmm. Okay, same thing.
At that early stages we were, and then that's how we opened that up. But that was just about the time 2005 is when we sold. So my brother kind of partnered in 2005. We sold. Again, we sold the Houston branch in that name and the company, and then formed new companies with the other branches individually. And then I grew Dallas and Houston, San Antonio and Austin, and the combined grew from there. So in 2005, I was growing, and we had been growing in Houston. It was becoming really hard. Dallas and Texas has always had a low unemployment. It's just the business seems to always be booming, except for those short periods. But in 2006, I was starting to grow again once I took over the branch, the Dallas, and made it my own and really focusing on the growth. And I had gotten so tired of laying people off in the spring. Houston was better because you didn't have as much cold, but maybe 20% of our business, mostly one-time services, drops off every winter. And, you're not going to you can't carry 20%.
Right, and you don't want to it's like the most daunting thing to have to re-look and get people.
Nightmare.
Yep.
And then so every spring I'm looking for people. All my people I let go get gobbled up pretty quickly because they're good trained employees. Right. And I'm left with finding the ones that are available in the spring, and that's not normally a good place to start. So literally 2 years I was trying to figure out what do I do during that time of year to fill the void that's going to be a good add-on business and still make money and all of that. And in our trade magazines, I actually have Pest Control Technology back here. I would see Christmas light installation, and I'm pretty conservative financially. So I did a pro forma with a $500 per house installation price. And I thought to myself, who is going to pay $500 to have Christmas lights installed?
I've learned more.
Ironically,
more
a lot, and a lot more. So I kicked it around for 2 years, and my general manager, I said, let's do this and let's get after it. And I'm pretty good once I make the decision going forward. And so we went to a company in Houston, and they trained us. It was $5,000, the training, and the best $5,000 I ever spent. Our first year, we did $140,000 in sales in Christmas lights. And our second year, we did $360,000 in sales in Christmas lights.
And that's over like what period? Over what period of time of the year? Couple months?
You're literally installing for 2 months.
November, December?
60 days.
Is it really?
October and November. Ironically, you don't install a lot in December, and generally like about the 5th we stop because people paying thousands of dollars, $1,000, $1,500, $3,500 want more than 20 days. So the customers that we were going after don't want to do it at that point. In fact, most of them want it turned on over Thanksgiving so they can have a longer time period with those. And so that just turned out to be an amazing business, the cash flow from it. So I train companies now on how to start or improve and run your Christmas light business. 17 years of experience now. We basically have a franchise type package that's A to Z on how to do it. And I tell everybody, if you're not making 30% or more net margin, you shouldn't be doing it.
So can I ask you about the business a little bit? You brought up the margin. So I'm thinking here, the expenses. So you obviously have labor, but I'm assuming the labor is your labor that you have, right? It's your labor, right? That you're not bringing in. Are you bringing in additional employees just for this time of year as well? You have people, or no? Or are you just using the staff that you're operating out of all year? If this is like when it's part of a pest control or another shop, not
right. And I think that's what I love about working with y'all, is because my history is kind of what was pest routes and now field routes is. My background is most of y'all's customers' background. We know it's expanding into other services, and I was with Pest Routes forever. I remember when we first started here locally out of the Dallas market, I'd go into the office, and I was so happy to have them. They helped me build my business over that time. But that base of folks, customers y'all have my background's so similar to them, so I get excited when I talk to folks about how this will help their business. So I kind of got lost track of
what I was asking was, in other words, I'm looking at you mentioned the margin, so then I'm thinking of expense, right? So I'm thinking to myself, what's the expense of that? So you have a labor expense, and then I'm wondering about the actual lights. Do you own the lights, or does the homeowner purchase the lights? And then you store them, and then you sort of bring them out do you know what I mean by that? Like, what is the model?
Absolutely.
Who owns what?
That's one of the biggest questions or debates in our industry. But I'll answer the first one about the labor first, because you're right on track. Those are the two biggest costs, just like most businesses. Labor is number one, and then your product cost is number two. The labor was, again, originally the idea was that I would be able to keep my employees
right. You just use Bill's now here, and then Bill is just going to come over here, kind of thing. Right. Okay.
And I don't have to lay Bill off.
Right. Exactly.
And so the irony was, you also hit on the head, is I ended up having to hire more. So I didn't expect to grow the revenue line like I did, but I don't do anything half. Right. So I'm a type A personality, and I get after it. Once I started going and saw the kind of business it could be, I really pushed it. Especially, it really helped because, again, we started in 06, 07, everything was awesome, economy great, and then 08 hit, and it totally fell off in 09, and I had to lay half of my technicians off. I had customers just basically saying, look, unless it's free, I got to cancel, I can't pay my mortgage, kind of stuff. Yeah. Everybody experienced. So, but the irony of the Christmas lights was, I don't think I lost one customer. A good percentage of them had to reduce their amount they were paying. So if it was $2,500, maybe
so you're saying if it was the home service, like the pest control service, they were no, but with the lights they kept. Jeez, really? I
had to lay off at least 40% of my technicians at the time, and I would have been in real trouble. But the Christmas lights saved me. Like, I just lessened and reduced the price tag on it, but none of them quit. I mean, I serve a very high end in Dallas, so the wealthy are still going to do Christmas lights, whether the economy is soft or not. But so that turned into a growth division for me. It was originally added on as, let's keep our people
like
busy, let's try to make some money.
Almost, yeah.
Cash flow just dropped to the bottom line, and so a key that in our training is that I tell companies, because almost anyone that does Christmas lights is adding it on to current business. That same model, like you have a bell curve of busyness in the summer.
Right. You want to get the shoulder months up. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Keep that revenue stream more flat and not falling off. Yeah. Keep your employees busy. But I had no idea the demand that was there and the profitability that was there. So I started growing that Christmas lights, and it was just spinning off cash. Now, as a business owner, you can do two things when you're dropping cash to the bottom line, right?
Reinvest and put it in your pocket.
Spree, or you can reinvest, right? Yep. You can go buy boats or new sports cars. I'm the reinvest guy. Yep. So I think at that time, my pest control was doing maybe $1.5 million Let me think about 2005. Yeah, it was probably doing just over $1 million. And in the next 10 years, I went to almost $6 million. And most of that increase was taking that cash from the Christmas light business and reinvesting it in advertising and marketing and equipment. And so it's an amazing add-on business in the fact that it doesn't just keep your employees busy and doesn't just add some revenue, but it really spins off cash that
you can just take and put it in and go and go and go. Wow. So you were surprised at how it took off and how it really took, right? Because I think when I hear about it, I had the same thing, and I'm hearing about all these people doing it, and I'm like, wow, this must be a real thing. But I mean, it's a short period. I guess the next jump, and maybe you're going there, is like, is this something you can just do, or does it always have to be with something else? Is the question. Right.
So I'm going to jump back a little bit because I didn't answer your question about the
who owns the lights. Right.
Yeah, because that comes down to the fundamental what we train on. So we had a 3-day training. We have some on demand on our site, but our biggest is a 2-day training. It's a day of full classroom, and we go everything from A to Z. Like, we can talk about how you form your company, you want to do LLC, the marketing, sales, the equipment you need, how to put proposals together, market pricing, average, all that stuff. And a big part of that discussion in the classroom is our model. So the way we train is how our whole installation company grew. And it's not a franchise. It's like a franchise model, has franchise level support, forms, brochures, processes, but it's not. You can take anything we have once you go through our training and become a partner, and you can change it however you want. You can modify it to what fits you, your market, your personality.
So you don't have to hold it to like a strict franchise standard, if you will.
Exactly.
Okay. Right.
I went through that whole franchise process, and I realized I never want to be a franchise because as an individual business owner, as an entrepreneur, most entrepreneurs want that freedom to do what they want to do. They're hopefully smart enough to recognize, to know what they don't know, and to go out and get that information, to seek training, because coaching and training is how you get from a good company to a great company. I mean, there's no shame in going out and borrowing ideas or implementing other people's ideas, improving your business. Super important to get to that next level. So we started doing classes, and part of that training on that first day of classes is discussing how our business model is, which is a full service business model. When we approach a customer, we tell them, we're going to design your installation. We're going to design your Christmas decorations. We're going to install it. We're going to maintain it with a 24-hour reservice policy. We're going to store your product. We're going to test it all in our warehouse before. We're going to take it all down, store it. We're going to test it all in our warehouse before we come out next year. And it's the same price every year. There's not going to be a price increase. You can change your design. You can change your colors. You never have to buy lights. If something goes wrong, it's all inclusive. So what that does is put the customer like, oh, that sounds great, right?
So I just walk outside and my house has beautiful Christmas lights on every year.
Exactly. You write me a check, you give me a credit card, and anytime, and most of your audience will know this, and you know this, is you can direct your customer in whichever way you want if you take control of that conversation. So when people call and we don't say, oh, well, did you have something in mind? Because they'll give you all kind of crazy stuff. And we have scripts that help the folks learn how to do this. And one of the first things we talk about is when they call in is ask them, hey, our minimum is $1,500. Does that fit your budget? So your minimum may be $500, $700, or whatever it is. You don't need to carry on a long conversation in Christmas lights where time is, year round, everybody wants to try to get as much business in. We've got 50 install dates. It's I tell employees when I hire them in the season, like, hey, if this doesn't work out for you and it doesn't work out from us, no hard feelings.
Right. Exactly.
We're going to. And so that's mainly, if it doesn't work out for me, you're going to be gone. But I like to put that out there. So it gets you through a lot of leads and gets you to the people who really are interested. And then we do that all inclusive, which allows us to own the product. And most of the people that started in this industry for the last 10 years have been on what they call the sell model. There's like lease or sell. And when you sell a product to the customers, it's amazing you tapped into that and had that question, because it is one of the biggest debates, and the thing that I think separates the 30+% margin companies from the 12 or 10% margin companies is Because what happens is after year one, say I do 100,000 the first year, I've got to buy, it's approximately 40%, 30 to 40% of your cost will be product that year one. You're going to make money, but not a lot. And if you're not efficient, you may not make money. But year two, say I double my value, so my revenue line. So now I'm doing 200,000, but I only need 20,000 in product,
right?
Because I have already purchased that. Year three, I'm at 300,000, but now I only need 10% of that.
How don't you? No, if you continue to grow, don't you have to have always more? Isn't the product always spoken for if the customer remains? Do you know what I mean by that? If you have 100 sets of lights for 100 customers, then you add 100 more. You need to buy 100 more sets of lights. So are you always having to buy? Am I missing something?
No, you are. And I've got a pro forma, a 5-year pro forma that I go, anybody who takes our training, I'll walk them through it. We can put in all different kind of numbers, what your goals are, what your revenue, what your growth is. And what happens is, so if I have $100,000 in revenue year one, and 80% renewal is about our renewal rate. We renew 80%, which in a metroplex like Dallas or a large metroplex, you get 10 or 15% people moving in and out. So you have turnover. So 80% is really good. But the other 20% that don't renew, if I only do $100,000 year two, I've already bought $100,000 worth of product. So I take that 20%. I just install these new customers with that. I buy zero product.
I got you.
So year two, you have zero product cost. That 40%.
I got you. And then that percent of the bigger number, now you have more. So every year.
Exactly.
I got you.
And so your percentage of product costs go from 40 to 30 to 25 to 20 to 10. Ours runs about 12%.
Wow. So your top revenue number goes up and your bottom line is getting better as you go. So it's just like, it's a natural cash machine there. That's pretty cool.
My brother, and now I'm going to answer your other question about, can you do this without having another business? So when we sold I don't know if I should say who we sold to, but we sold to a large national company in 2018. I'll let y'all read between the lines. And my wife was like, okay, finally you can semi-retire. I decided I was just going to keep this Christmas light as an installation business, cash flow that, and live off of that and my money for myself. I did that for a year, and my entrepreneurial spirit said, okay, what am I going to do now? You're not that old.
What am I going to do now?
I do have outside hobbies, I promise, but I do enjoy business and that part too. So that's when I thought about franchising this and put the whole franchise package together. That was, and I was ready to launch in March of 2020.
And then something happened.
And not many people were interested in doing anything. So I took all this money I spent on this franchise package and put it on the shelf. Enjoyed my 2020. I was out in the pool in the backyard, just hanging out. But this is almost 2 years now of hanging out. So once that got passed and we realized the world wasn't ending, that I decided, okay, I'm going to go at this. I'm going to take it off the shelf. I'm going to do something with it. But I'm going to pivot from the franchise. I'm going to do these partnerships where expand the people. Now people can come in, the people I can help. That it's not a big cost to them up front. They could add it to their business and really improve their families' lives, their employees' lives, and all that. And so I get a lot of satisfaction out of that because I'm seeing it work now. This is our third year into the training and distribution, and companies that really take it to heart come back and say, man, we just completely changed how we did Christmas lights. And a big part of that is that lease versus sell model, because they see the cash flow that comes from it. And they tell me, just little things like having a minimum when a customer calls in. They say, oh my gosh, it's crazy. Like my prices, I've doubled my prices. I just had a company in Houston that said, we almost got rid of all of our 60 customers we had because they were so low price. We tried to increase them, but most of them canceled. We only did 30 customers this past season, but we made double the money. So it's the model that gets them there. And that starts dropping that cash flow, that all-inclusive model.
So how does it work for me if I want to get into it? So I engage with you and you provide obviously all of this information and all of this modeling, but is there also am I then good? I'm good to go and then I go do it, or am I still working with your company in some way? And is there a monetary exchange there, or they just pay for they pay for the guidance and the material, et cetera, and then they go on their own? What is the relationship like?
I love that question. That's a great one. And right now there's zero cost. And I've even had people say, in fact, one of the guys in Houston that changed his business said, when I sent my son up there and one of my employees to train with you, I was almost certain he was going to call me halfway through day one and go, Dad, why did you send me this? This is just horrible. And he said I didn't hear from him at all. He came back and he was one of the guys that said, we got to change everything we do. And so step one is going to our website, certifiedlights.com, and we have a training tab and you can go through that. There's info at Certified Lights. They can contact us. We're really big on working with people individually. Some people are kind of self-motivated and taught and can get in there and navigate. If they're not, we work, through email and help them get signed up. But the first step is definitely getting the training. I would suggest if anyone wants to get this, and it doesn't have to be through us. There's other companies out there training, but 100% get training, because I know it seems simple putting up Christmas lights, but so is pest control or, mowing your yard. But there's a lot of ways you can save time and money and make sure it's a business and not
I
just.
don't find putting up Christmas lights to be simple. See, so that's me. So this whole thing is becoming more appealing
it's
to me.
It's just putting up Christmas lights, and I'm like, okay. We do some houses that have like 500,000 mini lights in them, and it's crazy.
Goodness.
So that would be step one is getting the training, whether it's through us or somebody else. But for us, in fact, I've had probably 6 one-on-one meetings this past week where I go out to partners and have a 45-minute discussion of whatever they want. How'd your season last go? 2022 season. What did you need to improve from that? How can we help you grow in 2023? Let's look at the pro forma. Let's see what your goals are and what you're going to need to get there. So our ultimate goal, and again, we're in year 3 of this, so we're building it out and growing it, is to support our partners to get to the growth levels and profitability that we know they can get to.
Okay.
In fact, we're building out 12 months of webinars right now, and because it's part of my one-on-ones, I've got a lot of feedback from the partners of, gosh, I planned on doing this. I had all these things I was going to do, and then October was here, or November was here. And so, because most of them have that other business. And so we're going to do monthly webinars that kind of lead up to what you need to do along the way.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Prepared.
I love that.
Because we were guilty. When I had my pest control, man, October came fast.
Yeah.
I'm like, God, that's here again.
Right.
And we got to fix the trailers.
That time, it's like constant. And then you get to that October, right? And you're like, oh no, now I got to deal with all. Right. So this is going to be delivering stuff along the way. Is that like as you get
along the way?
Yeah.
We've got a Facebook page and group, so we have a lot of chat in there. We post a lot of learnings and quick learnings and stuff like that. But our goal is to continuously build our support for the partnerships to improve, every aspect of how they do in Christmas lights. So our whole partnership agreement is one page, and the only thing that a partner needs to do is buy their product through us.
Okay, got it.
And what I love about that, and I tell people all the time, like a franchise, they're collecting their 5 or 7%
they're getting all sorts
top.
of fees. Yeah, they're getting marketing
No matter how
percents
you
and
do,
marketing minimums. Yeah.
Losing money and they're getting their cut.
Yep.
That's not how I believe it should be. I don't believe that's fair. I pay my folks on production. It's something we teach in our classes. If you're the best installer, you should get paid the best.
Right.
And they do. And they get paid well for us in our model. But our partnership basically says, if you're not growing and buying more product, we're not going to make money.
You make money when they make money. Is that
exactly?
Yeah.
So it's tied in like that.
Yeah.
In fact, in my installation business, I have 6 warehouse people because of the distribution, also the size of we did $1.45 million, almost $1.5 million in Christmas light installation this past season.
Oh my God.
Crazy.
That's crazy. I would have never
insane.
Thought that. I would have never thought that.
2 months of installing Christmas lights.
Wild.
And that's at a 30% net margin.
But then again, people do crazy and wild stuff on Christmas. Christmas is like Christmas negates a lot of our normal logic in life, financially, sometimes, because it's Christmas time. Things get a pass. You're going to spend a little more money in Christmas time. You're going to do things maybe that you wouldn't normally do. It's Christmas. It's a holiday time. So it's capturing that feel. And it's not, you don't say we're not hijacking. That's what Christmas does. Christmas presents itself in a way that makes you spend more money. It's just it's a part of the thing. So when I say I could have never imagined, now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, I guess I could see it. I guess I can see why that would be such a thing. And in the context of this business in field and pest home, there is that concern for a lot of people. Like, man, it's going to slow down. What am I going to do? And this just seems like a very logical, smart way to feed that cash and keep the cash flow in and keep it coming in times where it's slow. I'm looking at the timer. I have a question I want to ask you before we have to close this. So excuse the transition, but I want to make sure, because you have this interesting background in selling. And I want to ask this question. Whenever I talk to someone that has sold, I like to ask them, one, was that your primary goal always to sell? And two, if it is, do you grow your business or do something differently to get there in a different way than if you were going to have your business for a long period of time? Frequently people tell me, no, I just have a good business. But also times I've heard people say, well, I particularly were focusing on this area. So I'm just curious about that part.
Yeah, from the greater pest control, and I'm always open if anybody ever wants to contact me off of this. I'll give them whatever knowledge I have, and it was 20 plus years in pest control. So the first time around, I definitely wasn't thinking about selling, although I even knew back when my dad had it, and I think most people that own a pest control company, because of the large national companies, there's always a willing buyer, and it's a pretty good buying price, and it's a good way to create a nest egg for retirement for yourself if that's your goal. The first time around, I didn't have that. The second time around, it wasn't my goal, but I always have in the back of my head, like, I didn't care about making a lot of money along the way. I cared about getting the growth out of my company. And again, that Christmas light helped do that, but also I didn't take a lot out. I lived nicely. I took trips, but I put it back into my business, and it's an easy way to build and create a sellable asset when you're ready for retirement. So somewhere in between, it wasn't my original goal, but I always had it in the back of my mind. And when I did sell in 2018, my reasoning was, first of all, I was getting an email or a letter in the mail every week. We want to buy your business. And it's hard to not respond to some of that, or at least look at it. And then I had some personal stuff going on my life that I felt like it was best for my family and myself that I wind down a little bit. Again, that's where my wife was like, I thought you were winding down. What happened to that whole plan we had? So, but prices were at the right point. My business had grown. One of my proudest moments is this PCT 100. I remember, when my dad had it when I first started, I'm like, man, what would that be like to be in the top 100? That would be amazing. Awesome. And so literally the year before I sold, we made the list. I think we were at 98 or something.
That's great.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. My dad had passed, but I know he was looking down going, thumbs up, son.
You got it, yeah.
Pretty cool. So it just made sense for me at the time to sell. I loved growing the business, pest control. You get good employees. We had a great workforce and all that, but that's where we were.
And you wouldn't say focus on this one thing if your goal is to sell. You want to make sure you have A and B done. I mean, because you obviously have to have a good business with growth. You got to have money coming in. You got to exhibit growth. I imagine there's margins that they're looking at, right? Is there a particular area where you found that they, meaning a buyer, would pay particular attention and make you more attractive?
Yes, there's definitely differences in if you're doing $1 million or $10 million. Whatever your revenue is, comparative companies, they don't shockingly look as much at the profitability because they figure, you could be not a good operator, not be as profitable.
Right, like we could fix that kind of thing. Right, yeah.
But what they do like to look at is the prices that you're charging. They want you to be towards the top of the market, and they want it to be long term. So if you're doing the door to door and you've got a lot of business, but it's been short-term growth, just recent, and you get a lot of cancellations, they're not going to value that like if you have 6, 8, 10-year customers that are stable.
That makes sense.
One of the things that I don't know how the industry is now, but I went to it way before most companies is I had a call center, and I told my call center, I don't want to ever hear quarterly pest control. You can't say quarterly pest control. We provide guaranteed pest control, and it's $29.95 a month. And I want you to get them all set up on credit cards. And I think more companies are doing that now, but back when I did it 10 years ago, it really got my business going in the right direction because it's such an affordable amount for people. And I had a hard time because the whole industry forever has been quarterly pest control at, $95 or $125, whatever it is. But that lower price point, putting on a credit card, people were used to, and it really was able to get us going. And I would suggest that for anybody out there that wants to build that business, that will help you. And those companies love seeing that. Press a button and charge credit cards.
I'm sure
every
they
month.
do. They just want to come in there and have a stable, efficient situation. I guess that you're right. That makes sense with the profitability because they could just shore that up like they do big businesses, right? That's what they do. Look at the margins. So, all right. So we're running out of time here. So here's the thing that I do with the guests in the last. I get this rapid fire part. It's like, so what I'm going to do is ask you like X or Y. And the first thing that comes to your mind, you're going to tell me what's your preference. All right. If some of these might be wacky and some of them you'll get. And then it's funny because as we listen to all the guests, it's interesting to see how they respond to the similar things. So you ready for this? Here we go.
I like it.
Texting or talking?
Texting.
Dark or milk chocolate?
Dark.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
I heard dogs in the background. I knew you were going to say that.
Yes.
Summer or winter?
Winter now. I used to be all summer, but
winter,
as I get older.
And Christmas time, more lights. Morning or evening?
Morning.
Morning,
which
me
I
too.
used to be night.
Salty or sweet?
Salty.
Nickname you used to be called? Did you have one?
My fraternity, I was Elroy from the Jetsons.
Elroy. Oh, see, I get the Jetsons reference. Maybe, oh my God. All right. Would you rather be able to speak every language in the world or be able to talk to animals?
Wow, that is a different. I would say talk to animals. I do speak Spanish, but I would rather talk to animals.
Scale of 1 to 10, 10 the best. How good of a driver are you?
A 10.
10. Look at that. Invisibility or super strength?
Invisibility.
Rats or mice?
Mice.
If you were really hungry, would you eat a bug?
Absolutely.
And is this the best podcast you've ever been on?
Amazingly the best.
Yeah, all right. So that's a good one. I don't think I got the amazing part. Well, listen, I want to thank you so much for coming on. This is so informative for me, and I'm sure it'll be for everybody else because I've always known about it. And I talked to, Zach. We always talk back and forth at Field Routes. We're talking about this and the logical utility of something like this, right? For a business in the space that we're in. And just for everybody out there, BeFieldFamous.com. You can find more information about the show, this episode. Tell your friends, subscribe on Apple Podcast. And remember, your success is fame-worthy. So come tell your story. My friend, thank you so much. Very nice to meet you. And thanks for doing this.
Thank you for having me.